Here's a movie trailer we're going to watch. It came out this January, and watch it, and then afterwards we're going to talk about some of the things that this says about sexuality and intimacy.
You don't remember my name, do you?
Did you have a good time last night?
It's all right. Nothing special.
Hey, Adam. You left your socks in my room.
Did I?
Hey, champ.
Hey, what happened last night?
You made my body hurt so much.
Your app.
Emma, did I have sex with anyone in this apartment last night?
No, you didn't.
So I just passed out on your couch?
Yeah, you were naked and crying. Do you like her?
I can't date her. She's my oldest friend. Hey, we're having sex.
I know.
Did you have sex with Emma?
No. Yes.
Wow.
I'm a doctor. I work 80 hours a week. I need someone who's going to be in my bed at 2 a.m. who I don't have to eat breakfast with.
I hate breakfast.
Good.
That's from Emma. Where are you?
You want to come back strong here. Like, where am I? Why don't you check your underpants?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't write that.
Maybe we should establish ground rules. No lying, no jealousy. Don't list me as your emergency contact. I won't call.
Don't ask me what I think about your body.
Yeah.
You probably shouldn't snuggle.
Yeah. That just felt wrong.
I think I'm falling for her.
That's a horrible idea. You're living every guy's dream right now. Why would you mess that up?
I really like you.
You always find these perfect guys, and then you're like, it'll never work.
I think monogamy goes against our basic biology. Go hook up with someone else.
You're kidding. Okay. I'm gonna call every girl in my phone until someone agrees to have sex with me.
Toast to that.
That is a terrible self-destructive plan, and we're behind you 100%.
You are such an overachiever.
Thank you. Go on a date with me. One date.
Why can't we just have sex?
You can't fight me. You're miniature. You fight like a hamster.
What does no strings attached say about sexuality and intimacy? For one, I think it would say that you don't need a relationship to experience sex. Just get together, have sex. Anybody, anytime, and sex is good, as long as it's free. I think it would also say that relationships get in the way of sex. In fact, intimacy is something that gets in the way of a good sex life. And if you could do away with intimacy, if you could do away with relationships, then sex would be so much more easy and more fun, more pleasurable. I think it also says that it's easier to just have sex than to deal with who you are as a person. Natalie Portman's character in the movies had a difficult relationship with her father. She's somewhat broken inside. She has difficult having relationships with any degree of intimacy with anybody. And so she would say, let's just have sex, because having sex is easier than me looking at myself and trying to become a whole person. It's easier just to live in this state of brokenness and have sex than to have any kind of a wholeness or development or growth as a person, let alone try to have intimacy in any level with somebody else. Let's look at another crazy question for a second. I think a lot of the cultural discussion around sex tries to answer this question. Can you have the pleasure without the pain? And a lot of the terms associated with sexuality and sex education is trying to answer this question. What about birth control, swinging, sexually transmitted diseases, friends with benefits, abortion, sexting, prostitution, porn, date rape, sex abuse, consenting adults, no strings attached? Can you have the pleasure of sex without any of the unintended, undesirable consequences? Can you have the pleasure of sex without the pain? I think, actually, that God has something to answer this question. And the way that God talks about sexuality in the Bible also answer this question, although obviously with a very different answer than Hollywood would give us. Can you have the pleasure of sex without the pain? God would say, yes, you can. In fact, the most appropriate, the best place to have sexuality, to experience the pleasure of sex without the unintended, undesirable consequences, is within the context of this thing called marriage. In fact, you want to have the pleasure of sex without a lot of the consequences you don't want, then what you do is you date, you get engaged, you have a wedding ceremony, and then go to it. Sex without the pain, without the unintended consequences of sexuality. So let's see what God does about this question. What does God say about sex? 1 Corinthians 6 says this. You say, I am allowed to do anything. Have you heard that argument before? Look, it's my body. I'll do what I want. If I want to have sex with other people, I'll do it. It's just me, and nobody is affected but me. Yes, maybe you're allowed to do anything, but not everything is good for you. And even though I am allowed to do anything, I must not become a slave to anything. You say food was made for the stomach and the stomach for food. Well, here's the argument. They say when you're hungry, you eat. If you have to go to the bathroom, you find a toilet. If I have sexual urges, then obviously that means one thing. I need to find some way to release this sexual tension. I need to experience sex. So if you're hungry, get some food. If you need to go to the washroom, find a toilet. And if I want to have sex, I'm going to find a girl and have sex together. But you can't say that our bodies were made for sexual immorality. They were made for the Lord, and the Lord cares about our bodies. Don't you realize that your bodies are actually parts of Christ? God is saying there's something much more significant going on within your bodies than you would understand. Your bodies belong to Christ. Your bodies have been made one with Christ. God has bought you. God died for you. Jesus owns you. And your body doesn't belong to yourself. Your body belongs to Jesus. So live your life in a way that you glorify Christ with your body. Should a man take his body, which is part of Christ, and join it to a prostitute? Never! And don't you realize that if a man joins himself to a prostitute, he becomes one body with her? Now what this is examining the lowest form of sexuality in our culture today. To take $50, find a girl, and pay her for sexual favors. And God says, even in the most dehumanizing way of sexuality, there's still a oneness, there's still a power of intimacy that's being experienced between the two that they didn't want, they didn't intend, they wish they could flee from, but it's still the reality of sexual experience. When you have sex together, you're joined together in a physical intimacy with that other person. And should you just pick anybody, just $50 and a girl, and be joined in body with her? For the scriptures say the two are united into one, but the person who is joined to the Lord is one spirit with him. So no, do not use your bodies for sexual immorality. Wait for that special day called a wedding, and then use your body for sexuality that way. Run from sexual sin. No other sin clearly affects the body as much as this one does, for sexual immorality is a sin against your own body. And don't you realize that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit who lives in you and was given to you by God? You do not belong to yourself, for God bought you with a high price. So you must honor God with your body. So then what? What about after the marriage ceremony, after the wedding? Then what? Well, here's what God would go on to say. Now, regarding the questions you asked in your letter, the husband should fulfill his wife's sexual needs. Let me break that down. The wife has sexual needs, and the husband's job is to meet those needs. Now let me say something. Guys figure they've got this all figured out. They all think they're stars, they all think they're macho jock men, and they think they know exactly what makes a woman happy. Men don't know jack about making a woman happy. So women, you need to tell your husbands what pleases you, what makes you happy, where do you find pleasure, where do you not find pleasure, what does he do that bores you to tears. You need to talk about sexuality. You don't need to talk about everything, but this is one area where you need to be upfront and talk and tell your husband what makes you happy. And then men, your job is to meet those needs. Your job, you show up, you say, yes, man, reporting for duty. What can I do to please you? And the wife should fulfill her husband's sexual need. This is obvious. Guys have sexual needs. They like their wives to fulfill those needs. Guys are a lot more upfront. So here's how the game goes. The husband does everything he can to make his wife happy. The wife does everything she can to make her husband happy. They're giving themselves totally to each other to bring pleasure to the other person. Now that's a bargain I can live with. The wife gives authority over her body to her husband, and the husband gives authority over his body to his wife. So each of them forfeit control over their own body, and they submit themselves completely to making their spouse happy, meeting their needs. Do not deprive each other of sexual relations unless you both agree to refrain from sexual intimacy for a limited time, so that you can give yourselves more completely to prayer. Afterwards, you should come together again, so Satan won't be able to tempt you because of your lack of self-control. Here's what God says. You should have sex. Often. And if you want to stop for a little while to have a time of prayer together, that's okay. You stop and pray. And then after you're done praying, you come together and you get active at it again. You both have needs. There is no room for bargaining, no negotiation, no if you do this, then I will go to bed with you, we'll have sex tonight. None of that. The husband and the wife both should give themselves to meeting each other's sexual needs, not in a way that allows anybody to be domineering or cruel or abusive, but in a way where both are mutually submitting to the other person to make each other happy. In all these different ways of intimacy, use sex to become one. Sex is one of the most powerful ways to become one as a married couple together. So use sexual intimacy to become one, to really drive for the deepest intimacy that you can experience. And actually what you're doing in the biblical context, you're using sexual intimacy, and through that you're actually becoming closer to God. Let me tell my story. When I was 21, just after university, me and Darcia began dating. We were away at a conference. We just kind of started dating by accident, even though she was long interested in me. I finally noticed her, and we developed what first became a friendship, and we started dating as a couple together. We had dated for a couple of months, and then I finally asked Darcia if I could kiss her. She had never kissed any boy before. She was saving it for somebody special. And when I asked her, she said, "I'm saving it for a keeper." She was saving her first kiss for the person that she was going to marry. And after that, I decided I am not going to ask her for a kiss again for a long time, because I was not ready to become married. We dated for several more months. And then after about a year and a half, finally I proposed and asked her to marry me. And then it was a couple of years after we first started dating that we got married. We went through the ceremony, the reception, and then we went to the hotel room, and both of us had saved ourselves sexually for marriage. So we were both virgins on our wedding night. We drove to a hotel, we checked in, we went up to our room, and then like any good Chinese drama, all I'm going to let you see is the sheets blowing in the wind.